Good evening, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Cliff Gillespie. I'm Assistant Director of Sanitation. Thank you so much for joining us this evening here in person, and to those of you online for an update and to get your feedback on our progress towards updating the city's local solid waste management plan. Thank you very much to the city's Office of Arts and Culture for allowing us to use the beautiful Latino Cultural Center this evening, and thanks as well to the arts and culture staff of the LCC for your support. Joining me here on stage is Jay Council, the Director of Sanitation Services for the City of Dallas, and Scott Pasternak with Burns & McDonnell, our consulting firm assisting the city with this project. There are also several other key staff members here in the audience with us, and also folks from Burns & McDonnell that may assist us from time to time with specific questions or discussion points. I don't recognize any elected or appointed officials in the audience with us this evening, but if you're here, please raise your hand so we can note your presence. And just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. The meeting is being recorded. We have attendees joining us virtually via Zoom webinar. And rather than printing the materials for this meeting, we've set up a website with links to the presentation, the project website, the 2011 plan, and more. So if you scan the QR code on the screen with your phone, or you open your web browser and go to planmeeting.dsan, that's dsan.us, you'll have all the information at your fingertips. For our online attendees, there should be a link in the meeting chat on this to this site. There's also a button there for you to register your attendance for the meeting this evening. It's very helpful for us to know how many folks were able to join us. There will be several interactive polls during the presentation where we will ask you to pull out your phones and vote on certain questions. If you want to get that ready on your phone now, there's a button on the meeting website titled In Meeting Polls that will take you to the right place. Finally, we'll reserve time after the presentation for questions and discussions. And for the folks joining us from home, please use the Q&A feature on the webinar to submit your questions. Our outreach manager, Glenn Ayers, is monitoring those in the back of the room here. So I'll turn it over to Jay now to get us started.
Good evening. I'm Jay Council, Director of Sanitation Services. Thank you for attending our public meeting for the update of our local solid waste management plan. For the agenda on first slide, for background, we're going to be talking about the background and the update of our local solid waste management plan. We want to discuss our draft objectives and goals that we're considering for the plan, discuss the impacts of those goals on the single family, multifamily, and commercial sectors. And we also want to discuss the infrastructure needs for material management and next steps. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines our background. It talks about our current plan. It was developed in 2011 and adopted by the City Council in 2013. In 2014, we adopted a single-use plastic bag fee. And a year later, that plastic bag fee was repealed by the state. In 2016, we entered into a public-private partnership with FCC Environmental to build and operate a recycling processing center at Cumberland Special Landfill. And about a year later, that processing center opened up. In 2020, the city developed and implemented CCAP goals. And also the city updated its multifamily recycling ordinance. In 2020, the city also implemented a 10 cubic yard limit on brush and bulk items set out for single family households. And last year we did a pilot of bulk and brush pilot, separation pilot, that was 90 days in 6 neighborhoods throughout the city. And finally, we're here to do our final updates, one of our final public meetings, to take inputs from the public and to hopefully take this recommendations to the City Council for adoption later this year. Next slide, please. This slide talks about our approach, how we reviewed our current plans, existing systems. We assessed their needs and where we're trying to go into the future. And we make sure that plan was in alignment with the CCAP. Additionally, we updated our goals and objectives. We developed tactics to meet those goals and objectives. We evaluated the options. We identified key findings and recommendations. And we developed the implementation and funding plan. And again, we hope to take the findings and recommendations to the City Council later this year for adoption of this plan. And throughout this plan, there was coordination between city and stakeholders. Next slide, please. This slide talks about our thought process throughout the plan. It's updated our objectives. We evaluated our current systems, assessed our long-term needs, aligned our plans with the CCAP. We set specific goals. We wanted to make sure those goals were aspirational, yet realistic and achievable. We identified the options, developed recommendations, and those recommendations we wanted to implement and be part of our goals. Next slide, please. This slide here highlights the coordination between the local solid waste management plan and the CCAP. These 7 bullet points here shows that direct coordination from source reduction, recycling market development, beneficial reuse of landfill gas, and organics recycling. And the CCAP goals specific to material management are at the right of the slide there, where it says 35% diversion of organic waste by 2030, 80% by 2050, 60% diversion of paper waste by 2030, and 90% by 2050. 35% diversion of waste from the landfill by 2030 and 45% by 2040. These draft goals in the plan position the city to meet its 2030 goals. Next slide, please. This slide is an outline of our plan here. Sections 1 through 4, basically an overview of the plan. Section 5 to 13, it's basically the meat and potatoes of the plan. It talks about our programs, policies, infrastructure evaluations, from our transfer stations, refuse and recycling collection, household hazardous waste collection, public outreach, and education. Basically everything that the city of what the sanitation does for the city of Dallas. And last, the technical at the end of the plan is the technical appendices that includes a stakeholder engagement summary. At this point, I turn it over to Scott to continue with our presentation.
Thank you, Jay, and good evening. Again, I'm Scott Pasternak with Burns & McDonnell, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the efforts for us to collaborate with the city of Dallas on the development of the plan. And a key aspect of that development has been a very robust level of effort for public and stakeholder engagement. So it started last year with a survey where we got great participation responses from more than 5,500 single family and multifamily residents, as well as commercial businesses from the city of Dallas. We also are going to be conducting another survey, some of which you'll be able to respond to tonight via the poll everywhere that we'll be doing throughout the course of the discussion. But there's also another aspect of that survey that you can access at dallaszerowaste.com. And so I would encourage you to please reach out to your other folks that you know within the city, and please encourage them to participate in that survey. The website that's at that same location has also been a key aspect of the efforts to engage with the community throughout this planning process. Cliff mentioned this earlier, but we would encourage you all to please go and check out that website. It has a lot of meaningful information about this planning process. We've also have conducted a number of very important interviews, both with external stakeholders as well as multiple departments within the city of Dallas. And all of these interviews have been very helpful to provide not only a key understanding of what's currently happening, but more importantly, what could occur in the future from a solid waste and zero waste planning perspective. And then there's also been multiple presentations to city leadership throughout the course of this process, and those various committees and commissions are listed here on this slide. And then as we go on to the next slide, this is intended to communicate to you what are the draft objectives for this plan. And so when we talk about the concept of objectives for a solid waste or zero waste management plan, what we're really looking at are what are the core values or ideas that need to be held constant as we look at the recommendations as a part of the plan. What we like to say to our cities who we work with is that these objectives should really be our compass to making sure that for whatever is in this plan, that it's in alignment with these objectives. So in working with the city to develop these objectives, we wanted to recall the ideas and to provide overall consistency with the 2011 local solid waste management plan objectives to again make sure that we are still looking at achieving that path toward zero waste in terms of maintaining that progress for the city's zero waste goals. But also we wanted to look at what can be done to really focus on goals that are important to be achieved within the context of the next few years, such as the ones that Jay just mentioned relative to CCAP in 2030. And that's where these objectives have been developed so that they are very much in alignment with what's in CCAP. And then also from the listening that we did from the discussions with the various stakeholders to look to incorporate that information as well. So these draft updated objectives are presented at the bottom half of this slide. So just real quickly to make sure that you have a good understanding of those, we will read through them. So the first one is to empower residents and businesses to reduce the amount of discarded material generated through proactive education and outreach. The second one is to establish and implement innovative operational best practices to provide efficient, cost-effective, and environmentally responsible service. The third is to provide excellent customer service and to support residents and businesses to maximize diversion from landfill. And then the last objective is to operate a clean, green, and efficient waste system that seeks to generate energy from organics. On the next slide, here's where we want to provide an understanding of what are the different sectors that are generating material to be diverted or landfilled within the city, because there's a very significant difference in how that material is managed within the city of Dallas. And that's really important from a planning perspective because areas where the city has more direct control, it's more straightforward as far as setting goals and objectives, as well as the specific programs that can be put in place to achieve those goals and objectives. And that's the case as shown in the green middle circle, which is representative of the residential sector. So it is the situation that the sanitation department provides effectively all of the services for those customers, be it brush and bulky, recycling, as well as refuse collection and various other services like household hazardous waste. And so this is an area where the city has much greater sense of control over those services, and that also provides a lot more information and data related to the programs that are in place. Then the next circle is specific to the multifamily sector, and this is an area where the city does have a greater degree of influence than compared to the larger circle of the commercial entities, but it's still not quite the same as what happens on the single family residential side where the city is the service provider. But for the multifamily sector, the city does rely on a network of private companies that provide the service through non-exclusive franchise agreements that they have with the city. But there is an ordinance in place that does require recycling by haulers for multifamily complexes in the city of Dallas. And then the last part of this circle is focused on the commercial entities, where this is an open market where businesses can be served by any number of companies that operate under non-exclusive franchises. And so what that means in the city of Dallas is that there is an open market, and it's more challenging to understand what are the quantities and levels of service that are provided on the commercial side of the business. So the next slide then speaks to what does that mean in terms of what can be done in terms of setting near and long-term goals specific to these three very important but also differently managed sectors within the city. So if we first talk about single family, there we are able to collaborate with the city to set very specific goals and metrics. And so the goals that are communicated here, both on a near term and a long term basis, are consistent with the ones that Jay just mentioned, as they are directly from CCAP. And this plan has been specifically developed to allow the city to achieve those 2030 goals as it relates to single family. Whereas on the multifamily and commercial side, there becomes a little bit more challenging to set similar types of quantitative goals as we can on the single family side, because for both multifamily and commercial, we just don't have the tonnage and quantity type of information as we have on the single family side of things. So the goals for multifamily and commercial are more focused on concepts like program participation, as well as reporting compliance. And so with the city having recently in 2020 implemented its multifamily recycling ordinance, the near-term goal for that program is to achieve a 90% reporting compliance and verification of entities that are subject to that multifamily recycling ordinance. And then on a longer term basis to really allow that ordinance to take effect and to be implemented to then allow the city to evaluate options for future consideration. And then on the commercial side, the goals there on the near term are to expand the existing green business certification program and to achieve a 90% reporting compliance and verification for those companies, of which there are more than 100 that are subject to the non-exclusive franchise agreements. And then on the long-term basis, similar to the multifamily side, to analyze data to establish the goals that will be consistent with future programs that will be considered. So then so we go to the next slide.
Actually, we have a question real quick that's related to the slide before this.
Okay.
Two questions, actually. So this particular slide, control of material by sector, does the slide showing sectors represent the actual ratio between sectors?
Sorry, Glenn, did you say that the ratio of the quantity of material?
Yes, probably,
Okay.
yes.
Yes. So great question. And I apologize if I did not clarify that during the presentation. But yes, this is meant to, generally speaking, communicate the relative quantities of material. And so the single family does represent a lower quantity of materials as compared to the combined commercial and multifamily sectors. We do have data along those lines within the plan, but because those entities are not required to report all of that information, they are estimates that are based on material that is, say, going into the city of Dallas, McComas Bluff landfill and other data that we were able to evaluate as a part of the planning process, but we do not know exactly the quantities of material that are generated by the commercial sectors.
Was there another question?
The next question is updating near and long-term goals. Why are you not specifying plastic, glass, and metal waste? I do recycle these in my Dallas blue bin.
Yes, good That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So I think that that is specifically referring to where it calls out paper waste at 60% by the year 2030 and then 90% by the year 2050. And so the way that we understand that is that paper is a part of the overall recycling program. And so in our analysis and our recommendations within the plan, it calls for achieving a 60% capture rate, not only of the paper, but those exact other material types that were just mentioned. So glass, as well as plastic bottles and aluminum and steel cans. So you're definitely right in line. And the analysis that we've done in our recommendations are based on the broader set of materials that are a part of the city's recycling program. It's just that within the CCAP, they had specifically referred to paper.
And just to follow up, is plastic the worst offender in the landfill?
Is plastic the worst?
The worst offender, the highest quantity in the landfill?
No. While there certainly will be amounts of plastic that do end up in landfills, plastics as well as other types of recyclable materials do end up in not just the city's landfill, but landfills all across the region and the country. And so that's where this specific goal is focused on making sure that progress is made to move more of that material that should be recycled from the landfill to the city's recycling facility.
We're at a break, so go for it.
Although
We're
I think, hold on, sir. Could you, I think there's a microphone, if you wouldn't mind holding just 1 second so that the people who are listening online can hear your question. Okay. So there you go. Yeah.
No,
please.
I'm wondering about all the materials that cannot be recycled, like styrofoam, all the different types of foam and the plastic films. I go through my neighborhood and I look at the recycling. The people are, and this is a well-off neighborhood, you know, $1.5 million homes, and no one knows how to recycle. And then you got Amazon and all these companies shipping this stuff in cardboard boxes with styrofoam in it. And when the machine picks it up, it breaks up and it's going all over the damn place. It's in the lakes. Lake Ray Hubbard, you can walk across the lake in places. How do you're not gonna be able to recycle it?
Right.
It seems to me like those type of materials have to be either banned or, you know, some other.
Is not really able to cover that. But the message, and I understand that it can be a real challenge to get that across, is to take those materials back to the stores where they were purchased. A number of grocery stores will have places where you can just drop those plastic bags right off and recycle them really easily. And when they're recycled that way, they actually have a lot of value and can be made into other products. Yeah, exactly. Plastic lumber is a great example.
We're back online. Okay. Okay to proceed, Scott.
Okay, I need to log back in too, I guess.
We get any questions in?
Scott's just having to log back into the. So everybody at home, we had a little technical difficulty. We're back online now. Thank you for bearing with us. We took a question from the audience, but we're getting started again here.
All right. My apologies. In the interest of keeping things going, I'm going to just take a look at this question. So we're now entering the live polling part of the discussion. And so if you have not been able to access the polling through the QR code or directly through the city's website, So there's a couple of other ways that you can access this. One would be to send a text to the initials BMCD. And then you send that to the location of a number of 22333. Another option would be to access it on your computer. And the website there is pollev.com/BMCD. So hopefully everybody's able to participate in the poll online. And so the first question that we want to ask is, to what extent do you think the updated goals and objectives will move the city toward its long-term zero waste goals? And so if you could simply just answer A, B, C, D, E, or F, we'll be able to see your responses.
So Scott, I think because you were, apparently we have to be close to the microphone for the audience at home to hear us. So you might be able to clip that out.
Okay.
While, sir, I know, I see you over there trying to figure out what. Okay.
Is that better? Okay, my apologies, and thank you for telling me that, Cliff.
Yeah.
Should I repeat
I think so.
that? Okay, all right. Again, sorry about that.
Here, give it a good yank.
Let me do this. Is that better or still okay? So for the poll everywhere, hopefully you can access that through your QR reader that you've already entered in. But if you
Here's
need
slide
to access that information again, you can send a text to BMCD to the number 22333, or you can also participate via the website, which is just pollev.com/BMCD. And so we're going to be asking a series of questions. And the first one is, to what extent do you think the updated goals and objectives will move the city toward its long-term zero waste goals? And so you can simply just enter in whichever letter you think is the right answer between A through F. So far we've got about 8 responses that have come in. All right, so thank you for those who have communicated. So it looks like about half of you all either strongly agree or agree with that. A few people disagree, which is understandable. And then quite a few are saying that you need more information to decide. So we definitely understand that perspective as well. And for those of you all who answered that as far as needing more information, that's where we would definitely encourage you to please check out the website of DallasZeroWastePlan.com to get some additional information.
I think we're back to me now.
Yes.
Okay. So if we can go to the next slide, there we are. Diving in a little bit more specifically on single family services, looking back or thinking back to the slide just a moment ago with the sphere showing the control of material by sector. This would be that service that's under direct city control where we have the most ability to influence or make change. So the city is the exclusive solid waste service provider for single family homes in Dallas through the Department of Sanitation. The city provides weekly recycle and garbage collection via curbside or alleyway services. We also provide a monthly brush and bulky item collection service. And through a contract with Dallas County, we also provide access to a home chemical collection center. And we offer BOPA, which is battery, oil, paint, and antifreeze collection events at various locations throughout the year. In support of the city's CCAP goal to improve solid waste, recycling, and brush and bulky item collection efficiency, we are actively working to convert our fleet as we are able to more automated trucks. To do this, we generally must relocate collections from alleyways on a route to curbside collection. So we look first to those alleys where the total right-of-way clearance is not sufficient for the safe operation of our vehicles. The smaller vehicles often used in those alleyways don't hold as much material and must make more trips to and from disposal sites throughout the day. We're also increasing, as we're able, the number of CNG vehicles, heavy equipment that we use. Our fleet's currently at 24% CNG. And we're also working on a major reroute we're aiming to roll out later this year, which will more efficiently route our equipment through Dallas streets. With regard to brush and bulky item collection, we've presented to the City Council various ways to achieve a more reliable and cost-efficient brush and bulky item collection program while taking steps to align our service delivery with CCAP goals. In June last year, the full City Council was briefed on alternative models found in other cities and which would reduce the amount of time waste is on the curb and help control the cost for our ratepayers. The model the City Council supported for a pilot provided for monthly brush collection and quarterly bulky item pickup. The brush or green waste material free from contamination or other waste could be set aside for some beneficial reuse, such as mulch or compost. A 3-month pilot was conducted from October through December of last year in 6 neighborhoods from all sectors of the city. Limitations with sanitation's existing equipment and our staff to collect brush and bulky items separately, and our capacity to store and transfer clean brush material separately from other waste makes this model, this service model difficult at this time. But we're continuing to evaluate what additional or alternative resources may be necessary to make this or a similar model a viable option in the not too distant future, which we'll touch on later in this presentation. Finally, we understand that the Household Chemical Collection Center is inconveniently located for many Dallas residents in Northeast Dallas, far Northeast Dallas, and that their operating hours are not convenient for many people. We're already in discussions with the county about how to increase access to this service and the potential for a collection site in Southern Dallas. Next slide. This slide presents key recommendations in the single-family home sector. Education, outreach, and compliance efforts are critical to the success of current and future policy, program, and infrastructure developments. To increase the capture rate from the blue roll cart recycling program, the plan will provide that we first further leverage voluntary programs, including expanding our Take a Peek program, which we have staff here that can explain more about that, to better understand what residents are putting in their roll carts, and onboard vehicle technology to better understand also how they're utilizing their roll carts. And then with that information, we can better target and frame the effectiveness of the city's education, outreach, and compliance programs to achieve an increase in our capture rate. And we are acutely aware of the need for separate brush and bulky item collection. Currently, all materials collected through that program are disposed of in the landfill. Many of you know this is a beloved program of Dallas residents, many of which were not happy in 2020 when a 10 cubic yard limit on the amount of material that residents can place out monthly was imposed. During the brush separation pilot program that I mentioned earlier, we heard from residents who, whether they were in the pilot areas or not, who were very opposed to any changes they perceived to be a further service reduction. So to achieve this goal without increasing the number of staff, vehicles on the road, and fuel consumption, there will have to be some service expectation adjustments made by everyone. To make this happen, we must also upgrade our transfer stations to accommodate a third waste stream, clean green waste material, the third waste stream being green waste material. And we must also put in place infrastructure to process this material, whether it be for mulch or compost. And finally, there must be an end market for the materials generated. The plan will provide guidance to the city on these important steps. And finally, with regard to that household hazardous waste or home chemicals, we've already, as I said a while ago, we've already begun initial discussions with Dallas County on the city's need for an additional facility in the southern half of the city, and for an increased hours of operation so that's convenient for residents to properly dispose of these materials. Next slide, and back over to you, Scott, to walk us through these charts.
We actually have a question that was related to the alleyway pickup that you had, that you were talking about. What percentage of alleys don't provide sufficient clearance to safely operate collection vehicles, and what part of town are most of these inaccessible alleys located where you're currently providing alley service but would like to stop?
Very good question. I can tell you it's about approximately half the city is served via alleyway, the other half being curbside collections. Alleys that are not ideal for alleyway collection are throughout the city, and they can be for a variety of reasons, whether it be overgrown vegetation in the alleyway, poor pavement condition, other obstructions in the alley. Those things are actually the easier things to address. The harder problem is that total right-of-way clearance, the pavement width, the additional easement on either side for residents to be able to place their roll carts for collection where there's sufficient clearance without us hitting gas meters and fences and other things. So I can't give you a specific number or location. They're throughout the city, and we evaluate those as they come up. Good.
We have another question regarding residential collection. This individual is concerned about contracting with an out-of-state firm. He's concerned about workplace safety for garbage truck crews, how dependent is the recycling program on value of recycling materials.
For residential collections, currently we do not use contract crews there. We do have contract crews that assist us with bulk and brush collection, but to my knowledge, there's
They may be
no.
talking about the helpers too.
Unless you're talking about the helpers that are on the back of the truck. We do have city staff operates the vehicles. They are commercial drivers. We do have a contract with A&A Associates that provides us the laborers that ride on the back of the truck that actually lift the car. And we're talking about the manual rear load collection. Those are contract laborers, but that's about the extent of it. The rest of the staff that drive the vehicles are city staff.
It's an important consideration, though. We do recognize that staff on the back of the truck is not ideal. So where we are able to move to an automated collection vehicle that has one operator, it is a much safer means of solid waste and recycling collection. Okay, Scott.
And then the last question that was just mentioned was also how dependent is the recycling program on the value of recycled materials? And so the city's contract is set up so that the city does have a processing fee and then receives a share of the revenue from the sale of recyclables. And so over the past several years, we've seen really tough times in terms of the value of recyclable materials. But fortunately, in about the last year or so, the value of the materials have strongly rebounded so that they're back to very high levels. And so the value of the materials is definitely a key consideration from a revenue perspective. But the city does budget on a more comprehensive basis for the operation of its recycling program. So where the value of that material is important, it's not dependent on the value of that material for the operation of the recycling program. So what I'm going to do on the next slide is to talk about from the single family perspective, what the pathway is to achieving the 2030 goals that Jay originally introduced from CCAP. And then I mentioned just a couple of moments ago, because we think that it's really important that you have a good understanding of what's the city's looking to do over the next several years based on the programs that Cliff just described to allow the city to achieve those goals. And so this is a progressive slide. So this just gives you the framework of, in a moment, to be able to communicate what's happening presently in terms of the quantities of material that are going to landfill versus diverted in the green as organics that are composted, and in the blue as single stream recycled material. And so what we can see is that presently, and as the plan gets implemented, that there is a very significant quantity of material that is going to landfill, and some that is being recycled. And so it's going to take, as we continue advancing on this slide, several years to be able to get the programs improved and or the programs in place to where we'll start to then see real changes. But if you continue clicking through in a couple of years, once we get to 2025, that's when the city should be able to start implementing the changes that Cliff described related to the brush and bulky program. And then that's where we think that you'll start to see very significant changes in terms of the improvement of quantities of material on the single stream recycling program. And so what that means is by the time you get to the year 2030, the residential recycling numbers will be relatively similar to a number of other large cities in Texas that have very effective programs on the single family side of things. And then when we go to the next slide, this presents the similar type of information, but within the context of CCAP. And so what's on the right-hand side as far as the legend are the various goals that we have been communicating as part of CCAP. And so if you progress the slide, it'll show the same information in terms of the timeline across the bottom of the slide, but then the goals that are in place are to achieve that are to be achieved are at the top, the 60% capture of here it says paper, but to the question that was asked earlier, it's not just paper, but it's also the other parts of the recycling program. And then the bottom goal, that is the one in blue, that's at 35%, is associated with the increase in organics recycling, as well as the decrease in waste disposed. And so what this is showing is that the city should be on track to meet those goals by the year 2030, and achieving those goals will also correspond to the achievement of the recycling numbers that were shown on the preceding slide. So next slide.
Actually, it looks like we have a couple questions that are
Sure.
related to what you've just been talking about. One of which was, will we be able to put out compostable waste like produce, cuttings, eggshells, et cetera, for curbside pickup as a part of the move?
I can answer that one. So the first phase of what's going to be implemented for the city is to focus on the separation of the brush from the bulk. And so the program is going to be focused more so on that. But the plan is evaluating from more of a long-term perspective the potential for the city to look to divert those types of food materials that are described in that question. So it's an option within the plan, but it would be considered for a longer term recommendation.
Was there another question on?
Not relevant to what you were just talking about. I figured we would get through
Okay.
some a little bit later.
Sure.
All right, so we've got another poll question. And so I'll just read this one, and then people can please start to respond. So this one reads: to meet the city's zero waste goals, it is critical that yard waste and brush are collected and processed separately from bulky items. So we'd like to ask, which of the following is your preferred alternative collection frequency for separate brush and bulky items? So there's three options to choose from here. and definitely take a couple of minutes to read through these options as they do vary. So as we're waiting for those results to come in, a couple of other questions that have been asked. And Mellon, thank you for letting us know that you prefer option C. Would ask that you also make sure that you voted through the poll everywhere. Or if you're not able to, just let us know and we can record your vote. But somebody, Yvonne asked the question of understanding that, yeah, we can't get to all of the questions and comments now. So how are you going to address the ones that you have missed in the meeting? So I think we can certainly collaborate with Cliff, Jay, and the team to provide some written responses to those questions and provide those on the city's website.
Yeah, absolutely. On the DallasZeroWaste.com.
All right, so we can see the results here. So looks like people, about total of 36% are split on A and B, but yeah, so as Mellon just showed, yeah, thank you for letting us know you're not able to access the poll online, so we can adjust these numbers to reflect what you voted for, which appears to be in the majority of everybody else, which would be to have a monthly brush and yard trimming collection and quarterly brush item collection. So this is the kind of information that'll be very helpful as the city continues to evaluate the options as part of the planning process. So this next question focuses on the alley collection. And so this is where alley collection challenges city collection vehicles that are too large to maneuver safely and without risk of property damage. So the question here is, to what extent would you be supportive of a transition to curbside collection? And as folks are voting, Yvonne, thanks for that assist to Mellon, to help Mellon hopefully be able to vote online. But Mellon, just continue to let us know if you need to just type your response in the chat. We can update the responses accordingly. But let us know if that works for you too. All right. Hopefully everybody's been able to get their responses in there. We recognize that this is, a very important program for residents here in Dallas, and to see that almost, 60% are very supportive, and almost another 10% to be somewhat supportive of this is definitely very important to hear, but also still to recognize that there's about 25% of you all that either are somewhat or very opposed is also important to understand as well. And Cliff, I think you did a good job of communicating this one, since folks don't need more information to decide that one. All right, so the next question is, to what extent would you be supportive of roll cart yard waste collection in addition to garbage and recycling roll cart collection? So essentially this would be a third cart, but per the question that was asked a few minutes ago, this could be the point in time in which the city could then potentially consider also collecting food scraps within that third cart. All right, so Melon, looks like you're still entering your information via the chat. So we just saw that you were opposed to, just to clarify, Melon, can you let us know, is your response to this one for the roll cart question, or was it for the prior question on the, so if you could just let us know which one you're answering on that one, so we can make sure we get that correct. Okay. Yeah, we got you now. So thank you very much for that clarification. So again, I think these answers are actually somewhat similar to the prior question. So a lot of support, but also recognition that some people would have concerns about this. So the next question is, would a new household chemical collection center or satellite facility somewhere in the southern region of the city be more convenient for you so that you can then drop off your household chemicals and or electronics? All right, this one does include the not applicable answer as well. So you're going to see that in a few other questions in a few minutes as well. So for those folks who are responding in a, maybe the case that you're either representing say a business that doesn't have a need for access to those materials, or maybe it's the case that you don't utilize that service. So just wanted to give the context of why that was provided.
Okay, we're back to me again. Next, we're going to talk about the multifamily sector. And Glenn, if you wouldn't mind, jump back to slide 12 real quick. So just to refresh everybody on the control of material by sector, multifamily are going to be covered. It's sort of in that middle circle, covered by city ordinance, but not necessarily a service that the city provides directly. Okay, back to slide 23. So the city council adopted a multifamily recycling ordinance in 2019, which that provided that by January 1 of 2020, all multifamily properties with 8 or more units are required to provide recycling services to their tenants and employees. This requirement is enforced through the city's multifamily tenant inspection program, which is administered by the Department of Code Compliance. Recycling haulers are required to obtain a multifamily site recycling collection permit, that's a mouthful, from the city, and are required to make regular reports back to the city. And you can see here on the slide, we're showing some initial reporting data from 2020 here. I'll let you look over that. I won't read it all specifically. The big point there, I think haulers reported a total of 10,600 recycling tons collected, estimated 7,000 tons from multi-tenant properties. The challenge here is that private haulers are when they're collecting recycling, they're collecting from businesses and multifamily properties. So it's hard for them to report out specifically on what's coming from what. So they give us information and we're able to kind of back our way into an estimate on some numbers there. Next slide. The recommended next steps are first ensuring that all properties that are subject to this ordinance are in fact in compliance, tying this to the multifamily tenant inspection program that Code Compliance has a team of people assigned to, has shown to be very effective. In time and with certain modifications to the ordinance, we will be able to get more detailed data that can provide a more conclusive insight on recycling participation and where we can more effectively target our education and outreach resources and our enforcement efforts where needed. Scott, is there anything you wanted to add on to this one?
Yeah, I would like to mention that for the city of Dallas to put this ordinance in place was a really important step and places Dallas as really one of the few cities in Texas that have taken this kind of initiative. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that the ordinance has been in place really for just a couple of years. And so getting cooperation from pandemic is going to take a bit of time, but it's an ordinance that I think was very well thought out and should provide an opportunity for enhanced multifamily recycling here in Dallas for years to come.
Next slide. We've got another poll. So the city wants to ensure multifamily residents have convenient access to recycling. If applicable, do you find your apartment complex's recycling service hard to use? We'll give folks a couple of minutes to lock in their responses.
And I know that we're going to try to hold off on a lot of the questions so that we can make sure that we can get through the presentation and be respectful of people's time. But just as we're waiting for this poll question to come in, Jan did say that she believes that she has heard that 60% of Dallas homes are multifamily, and I think that's pretty close to being correct. So that's where the multifamily sector is a really important part of this planning process.
So looks like most of our respondents are single-family home dwellers.
Yeah.
So
But
good to know.
let folks, friends or other family who you may know that are living in apartments, please let them know about this discussion tonight. All right. And thanks everybody for that response.
I think we wanted to hit on the commercial sector before this
Yeah.
question. Can we go to the next slide?
Yep. All right. So now we're gonna talk about the commercial sector. So this is the one that we talked about earlier as far as having likely the most significant amount of material that's being generated, especially with the city of Dallas being such an important part of the economy for the North Central Texas region. And so the commercial sector, it's all sorts of different types of properties, facilities, business operations, and represents about 70% of the material that's presently going to the landfill. And then also a really significant opportunity for diversion, but because of the current system that is in place, we're unable to gauge exactly how much material is being diverted either through recycling or organics collection. So in the city of Dallas, there's presently a system in place where companies that qualify provide non-exclusive collection via franchise agreements. There's presently actually more than 100 of these companies. And so while these haulers are required to submit reports on a monthly basis, these reports don't quite include all the information that would really be helpful to understand what's happening from a disposal as well as a diversion perspective. And so getting this type of information going forward would be really helpful to not only understand what the current quantities of materials that are being recycled, but then also provide insight as far as what could the city do in the future. Now the city has been proactive, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier as far as putting in place the Green Business Certification Program, as this is intended to assist and recognize business entities that are able to incorporate recycling or to promote other important activities like reuse, reduction, as well as composting into their business operations. So on the next slide, this just gives a sense of what some of those next steps would be. And these are definitely very important since the commercial sector does present a very significant opportunity to increase diversion going forward. And so the first recommendation is to continue to expand the green business certification program, because that's something that is already in place and that the city can absolutely continue to move forward with. And then the second one is to look to adjust the solid waste operator reporting requirements. So if we can start to better understand what are the quantities of material that are being diverted or still being sent to landfill, then the city can start to build out more effective programs to manage those materials. And so the whole idea is to require submission of more comprehensive and verifiable data for refuse, recycling, and other diversion type of efforts. And so once that understanding occurs, then the city can then look to decide whether to adjust the non-exclusive franchise ordinances to require haulers to offer key services. And so this could include recycling and/or organics diversion programs. And so it's also going to be important as a part of this effort to establish compliance mechanisms that are in place so that you have a level playing field across all of the haulers. So in other words, just to make sure that everybody's playing by the same rules. So with that, we'll go on to the next slide and poll question. And so this, I understand we probably may not have a whole lot of businesses that are participating, but if you are a business, we'd like to ask if you would take advantage or if you work for a company that has a business in Dallas. I think you could look to answer it that way. But the question is, would you take advantage of technical assistance provided by city staff to implement commercial collection as a part of the Green Business Certification Program? All right, so understandably, this question is going to be not applicable to a number of folks, but looks like others are definitely interested in that. So definitely appreciate those responses. All right, so we have one other question on the commercial side. And this is one that you can definitely answer no matter who you are, whether you're here as a business or as a resident of the city. And so the question here is, how supportive would you be of an ordinance that would require haulers to offer recycling services to businesses in the city? All right, and Melon, we saw that your answer is A, so thank you for typing that in, and we'll make sure that gets reflected in the final answers. So far, a lot of support coming in for this, which is very interesting to see, and I think is also relatively consistent with the phase 1 survey where we asked a very similar question. So getting this type of information at different points in the planning process is very meaningful for the city. So we appreciate your responses here as well as your participation throughout the evening. All right, so let's talk about infrastructure. In order for the city of Dallas to provide all of the services that it does to thousands of people on a monthly basis, you've got to have an extensive network of really important infrastructure. So this slide provides an overview of that infrastructure, starting with the city's transfer stations. So the city does have a series of facilities where essentially collection vehicles that come to your homes will go during the course of the day to drop off the material that they collect, and then that material is then consolidated and aggregated into larger 18-wheelers that will then haul the material to either on the landfill side to the McComas Bluff landfill, or if it's recyclable materials to the city's recycling facility. So these are really critical parts of the system. But these are facilities that were built about 40 years ago. And so the city has been able to be proactive to try to send recyclable materials as well as trash through these facilities, but to try to then look at how to then manage broader streams like brush and bulk material becomes more of a challenge. And so in order to implement a number of the ideas that are going to be a part of this plan, making some key changes to the transfer stations is definitely going to be an important element. And then the city of Dallas owns and operates the McComas Bluff landfill. And so even though this is a plan that is really focused on increasing diversion as much as possible, there's always going to be material that unfortunately cannot be diverted. And so having the McComas Bluff landfill is going to be really important to continue serving the city's long-term disposal needs, but also the recognition that that facility has very valuable what's called airspace, or the area in which the material actually ultimately goes into the landfill. So the conservation and the protection of that airspace into the future is going to be really important to allow this facility to continue to meet the long-term needs of the city of Dallas and the region. When Jay provided his overview of the timeline, he talked about the opening of the Dallas FCC recycling facility in 2017. And this is a very state-of-the-art facility and represents a true public-private partnership that the city of Dallas put in place. And this is a facility that continues to meet the recycling needs of the city of Dallas. And then in line with CCAP providing ways to fuel and to provide collection vehicles that use alternative fueling is going to be an important part of this planning process. And right now, there is some infrastructure in place for the use of CNG, but it is somewhat limited. So that's going to be an important part of the planning process going forward to evaluate different options. And so the next slide gives a sense of what some of the key options are for infrastructure. And again, these are going to be really critical to achieving both near and long-term goals. And so the first one is to upgrade the transfer station system so that you can more effectively manage organics, because in order to achieve the diversion percentages that were talked about earlier, improvements to the transfer stations is going to be really important. And then similar to what has been done on the city's recycling side, to also look to develop a composting facility as a part of a public-private partnership so that there is a place to divert that brush material as well as other organics that may be diverted in the future is going to be a really important component. And then third is to increase some combination of CNG or renewable natural gas fueling facilities, as well as to consider whether to what extent electric vehicles can play a role in meeting the needs of the city's collection vehicles into the future. So, all right, Jan, thanks for that hooray for composting facility. That's definitely appreciated there. All right, so moving on to the next question. This one reads, to meet its long-term zero waste goals, the city needs to invest in its material management system. So the question is, how supportive would you be of the city upgrading its transfer station system to separately manage brush and yard waste? Right. So lots of support coming in for this question. So that's very much appreciated and helpful information. All right. This next question talks about alternative fuel vehicles and is directly related to CCAP. So to support CCAP goals, the city needs to reduce the number of diesel burning vehicles in its fleet. How supportive would you be for the city to purchase more alternative fuel vehicles, be it fueled by either natural gas or electric sources? All right. And Mellon, we see your response to that question as well. So thank you. I know we're trying to get through all these part of the presentation, but just as the voting occurs, just one question that Mellon had asked, which is just, does the city own and maintain the trash collection fleet or vehicles while the crews are not city employees? I just thought that was a pretty important question to just provide clarification on.
Yes, the city owns its trucks and collection vehicles, specifically the white vehicles that they're referring to. But again, the city crews drive and operate the city vehicles. The helpers on the back are contract labor. So yes, we do own our equipment. So the next steps, we want to evaluate the results of this public meeting in our phase 2 surveys, incorporate that public comment in this draft solid waste management plan, and finalize implementation and funding for the plan, present the updates to the city council for consideration and adoption tentatively in May or later this year, and begin the task based on implementation and the funding plan. Thanks for your participation. This concludes the presentation. I think now we can try to answer any questions that we may have in the chat there that we didn't get around to.
Yes, and we've switched from showing the presentation to y'all as a panel, just as an FYI. I will sort of, for those on Zoom, I'm going to go through these questions. Please know that any notes or comments that you've made we have and will keep for review. So thank you for those. Yvonne Salazar, recently, my husband went to your electronic waste collection site one Saturday morning, and without any warning, the worker there told him something like, "We are not open, go away." According to the city's website information, this collection area was supposed to be open that day. Can the workers just arbitrarily close the collection facility without any explanation? I believe this was at Fair Oaks.
Well, we certainly apologize for your experience there. Without knowing more details, it's hard to provide a specific answer. If I will say the hours of operation on our site, unless there's some extraordinary event was going on where we had to close the facility, are always up to date. We do our very best when there is some situation that requires a facility to be closed to the public, that we provide notice on the website. But if you would like us to look into it further, please send us a message on through the website there, the meeting website. There's a link to get in touch. We can certainly look into it further. And again, we apologize for any bad experience you may have had.
Norm asks, we take a lot of brush and clippings to the transfer station. Where will there be separation of materials there?
So there is an infrastructure need. So this is something we're planning for. Yes, in the future, if we are able to, when we are able to make those necessary upgrades on those resident drop-off days, there would be the opportunity to drop off your clean green waste material there, like you would the other waste streams, garbage or recycling.
Mrs. Larkins asks, are there plans to build new transfer stations to accommodate additional waste streams? If so, will their placement be spread where needed rather than areas with lower incomes? Will existing transfer stations need to be closed for residential drop-offs while updates are being made? If so, how will the city compensate for this, i.e. special or free collections by resident request or expanding code compliance community cleanups?
So that's a mouthful there, but let me start by saying we do realize that we have infrastructure needs to separate brush from bulky items. Our transfer system was built, like say 40 years ago, and it was designed really to handle one waste stream. That's when everything was going to the landfill. Subsequent years, we have started to separate, bring recycling in there. So we are handling 2 waste streams and keeping that those 2 waste streams separately. But we do not have the capacity to keep 3 waste streams, garbage, recycling, and brush separate. So we know that. So in the near future, we plan to go out with a request for a proposal to ask for, basically the capacity to build and properly additional transfer station there and see what that would look like. As we don't have all the answers yet, we're going to ask the public for that. And also placement of those sites will be sensitive and well thought out, because as Dallas is growing and placement of those facilities will allow us to deliver service better. We don't have the details yet, don't have date specific yet, but we understand that location of these facilities is critical to better serve our customers and to better divert and keep that material separately.
Mrs. Larkins also asks, what has been the response feedback from the Building Owners and Managers Association on strategies outlined for commercial recycling and possible future organics diversion? Has data been requested from them or shared by them about current diversion efforts voluntarily being undertaken by their member businesses?
I think to be able to answer that question, we can go back and take a look at some of the information that was provided through the stakeholder engagement process. And when we provide written responses to the various questions, we can elaborate on that question. But I'd like to be able to just go back and look at that information before we provide a response on that one.
And in regards to commercial sector, how would the city quantify the independent haulers who were really giving truthful replies?
State that again.
Well, the last part of that.
Yeah, so how would the city quantify if independent haulers were really giving truthful replies when it came to, I believe,
They're right.
Yes.
What they're reporting.
Yeah, so if the question was how to verify that the haulers are providing truthful information, was that essentially the question?
That's how I understand.
Okay, great. Yeah, so what other cities have done when they've required similar type of information from either haulers or other types of entities is to allow the provision that the city would have the right to audit the information that was required. And if the city would find that the information was not accurate, the city could have several different types of measures that could be taken against haulers that are not providing that information. So this would all be subject to the city needing to evaluate that and to put that in the form of an ordinance. But other cities that have had similar requirements in place could either place monetary charges against those companies and or maybe after repeated offenses, not allow those companies to actually operate within the city limits in the future.
Jen Falcona asks, do you have sufficient funding for staff needed to enact the measures CCAP outlines?
That's an excellent question. There are a number of goals that we can work towards with existing staff on some measures, such as brush and bulky item collection. If the if residents and and city council and others insist that the program remain like it is currently with a monthly brush and bulky item collection, but yet there is a mandate to still pick up those items separately to meet our waste diversion goals, we would have to hire more staff. We would have to have more vehicles, and there would have to be a cost associated with that passed on. So that is certainly not our intention. But in terms of additional staff or other CCAP measures, nothing specific comes to my mind. I don't.
No, the real kind of bottleneck in our operation is our infrastructure, not necessarily the staff. I think if we had the infrastructure, specifically the ability to transfer that material separately, we would have sufficient staff in the near term. Now, we could assess those later on, but that's the infrastructure is really the bottleneck, not necessarily personnel at this point.
I think we're going to go for one more question. I've heard the MRF does not support all types of recyclable plastics, e.g. they will recycle laundry detergent bottles, but not salad clam shells. Is there a way to make this information more transparent to the residents?
Absolutely. So off the top of my head, I'm not recalling what all or how specific our website lists the various types of materials, the different grades of plastic. We can go back and take another look if necessary. And I see Danielle, do you have anything to add? So a lot of that information is on our website. We will post a follow-up link on this project website for customers to find those specific details. And any questions in the audience? If not, I think we are out of questions.
Okay.
We appreciate everybody's time. Everyone online, thank you for participating. Those here with us, thank you. Staff who came and joined us this evening, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll keep you posted as we go through the process through our website. We have email addresses for a number of you, and we'll keep you posted that way as well. So with that, everyone have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.